Today, we are honored to have Dr. Nelson Aluya with us, a distinguished and results-driven physician leader with over 25 years of experience in healthcare administration, clinical leadership, medical education, and community advocacy. Dr. Aluya has served as the Chief Medical Officer of 2 major federally qualified health centers in Newark, New Jersey, and has held esteemed positions such as Medical Director of prominent rehabilitation centers and Assistant Professor of Medicine at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School. Beyond his medical expertise, Dr. Aluya is also a global affairs analyst of international repute, bringing a unique perspective to critical global issues. In this interview, he will share his insights on the race for critical minerals by world powers and its implications for global dynamics. Welcome, Dr. Aluya.
Drawing from thinkers like you, Dr. Aluya, what does it mean for Africa to become a ready-for-business continent through equitable partnerships, domestic processing, human capital investment, and stable regulations?
Right. For us to be truly ready or ripe for business, like we would love to claim, we talk about the African Continental Free Trade, and we talk about trade within us. In the last, discussion, we talked about, increasing our trade, intra-African trade, up to greater than 25% within us. Right now is 15%. And if we do that, that would also elevate our trade potential on the global space to over 5% to be truly, relevant. And of course, that will boost, Africa's GDP with a population of 1.5 billion people to over 2.3 trillion, which is a mere, abysmal number when you talk about the population that we have. Because if you talk about GDP per capita for the African continent, it's so small. You understand? Compared to other countries less than 2,000 or whatever. When the US and other developed countries, you have them 15,000, 20, 30,000, GDP per capita. So that's how indices that will help us prepare. Again, knowledgeable leaders, because without leadership, we can't achieve this. We need to have the right set of leaders with the right set of mind who are intellectually sound enough, know how to negotiate, know how to carry on, strategic plans, and not just carry on, but be able to plan, deliver them, and also have long-term plans. We talk about the Agenda 2063 for Africa. These are outlaid. So, but that agenda has to be spread. It has to be something that every African needs to know. I think it's about time that Africans, how do you call it? To summarize that Agenda 2063 into a small pamphlet or into a slogan that begin to permeate all of Africa. Because that's what China did. China said, never weak again, never intimidated again. That's a slogan. Or never weak again, never humiliated again. Because they were humiliated. There was a century of humiliation that they had. You understand? So Africa has to get to that point where we say never again. The Jews, after what happened to them with the Holocaust, said never again. So that's the mantra that they carry. Africa has to have a mantra like that. To say never again will we be humiliated.
I don't know if that's going to ever happen with the kind of leadership we have at the kind of leaders we have.
It will come. It will come because for the fact that you and I are having this discussion, these are minor small steps that are accumulating every day. Because guess what? Do you know that if Africans in 1900, at the turn of the century, the 1900, if they can imagine that even in 1945, that in 1960, Africans would become to have political freedom, would you ever have imagined that? No, they wouldn't. You understand? But something coalesced together that happened to the Black world. So in doing that, we also have to reach out to the diasporas. Huge. And when we talk about the diasporas, those who left Africa 500 years ago and those who left Africa 25, 10 years ago, we have to reach out to them and tell our Africans in the diaspora, Africa is right for business. Come on, trade. Look, if I walk the streets of New York or San Francisco or whatever, and another African American will walk the street, you cannot tell who's who. You cannot.
Yeah.
And when we speak, all right, fine, maybe by our name, and then we speak, you hear the accent. I tell them this, that their DNA, just like my DNA is rooted in Africa, there's no difference. So they must begin to go back to Africa to lay claim to the resources that their forefathers left behind. If the white man, the Afghani, the Pakistani, the India can come to Africa and lay claim to our resources, they too have the rights. They have the right to come lay claim.
They do.
So until we begin to convince them, let me tell you this, the buying power of the black man in this country in 2020 was $803 billion. Today, that buying power went up to $2.3 to $2.6 trillion. That's a lot of money. So imagine bringing that money to Africa to come and invest. Yes, that's what we're talking about. So for us to get Africa right for business, all of these parameters has to take place. But it is taking place. It is. I see the indices. I see the working mechanics taking place. Like I said, that is an awakening and a reckoning in the black consciousness. And there's a new beat in the black DNA. All those who pay attention will hear it. Not everybody is hearing it now. Some of us are. But eventually, every black person on earth will hear it, just like they did in the 1960s, that resulted in the political freedom of Africa. Again, I bet you in the next 5 to 10 years, it will happen again. Something will happen to the black race again.
I might listen to another Martin Luther King saying, I have a dream.
This beat that you hear that going on. Let me tell you where you hear it right now. In Afrobeat. You see what Afrobeat and Amapiano has done to the world.
Yeah.
I lived in this country where no African song was played anywhere. Even we were ashamed to even play African music. Today, African songs are played in radios here, in British, China, everywhere. And that is our power. Secondly, in the United States today, over 55% of black healthcare workers and even doctors who are working in the United States, over 55% are black and predominantly Nigerians.
Wow.
Of African descent. So you see all of these indices. That again is soft power. If you look around in China, in the Europe, nurses, doctors, technicians, they're all of Africa. So we are exporting these skills and talents. Eventually, they will come back home. The only thing I ask for and I pray for, that it is not a catastrophic evidence or catastrophic events that all bring us back home, but we'll come home willingly, intentionally, with a purpose. When those knowledgeable leaders have begin to take place in the continent.
I agree. Okay, so with the U.S. allies and others mobilizing, current, how can resource-rich nations like those in Africa gain geopolitical leverage in this competition?
Well, when they are mobilizing, they're mobilizing for themselves. They're not mobilizing for Africa. They're not. They're mobilizing for themselves, period. And really, when they do this, they have no intention. None of them is thinking of the black man or the black woman or the black child. It is only those who are black. Whether you're black Chinese, black Japanese, black Brazilian, black American, black Caribbean, black African, Ghana, South African, that will take up yourself, the females in your community, and the children in your community. And that comes down to forming strategic long-term plans. And how do you say that? And I said this before. For us to become truly dominant to a point where we control the 3 M's of racial dominance that I talked about.
Yeah. Money,
I take it in two fronts. Internal reconciliation and strategy formation, and then external affiliation and an association. And I'll take it and I'll tell you what those things mean. It therefore means the first prompt, internal reconciliation and strategy formation. Because guess what? If there's no unity and friendship, there can be a platform for planning. Within Nigeria, for example, we have our struggles, we have our problems, we have the dissidents and the secessionist ideology that's playing around. And all of this being planned because there's limitation of resources. Because I say this, that people go tribal when there's absence of resources.
Yeah.
I'll say it again. People go tribal when there's absence of resources. So that's what all these resources controls. And the secessionists, whatever is coming up. When Nigeria becomes rich and wealthy, all of these things will go away. They'll disappear. I tell you. So within us, within Nigeria, I'll give an example. We must resolve the problems and reconcile our problems within us. And those in Ghana, resolve the problems that we have within us. Resolve the problems that each and every African continent do have. And I'll tell you this, we really don't have that much problems. Because if you look among the African continent, we don't fight one another. We don't. How many wars have we seen Africans fight? But if you look at Europe, they fought themselves and they're fighting themselves today. They consistently, we don't do that. So we have minor, minimal squabbles that we not need to resolve. But one of the biggest wars,
influence from outside, and
correct.
yeah,
You understand? So, right. So the next big step in reconciling our problem is reconciling the problem of slavery, where we reconcile with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora who felt we sold them out, right? And they're lost out there. We must reconcile that so that the $2.6 trillion that they have, they'll be able to bring it together. Because when you internal reconciliation, that's when you'll be able to form strategy. That's why I call it internal reconciliation and strategy formation. So we reconcile our issues, then we begin to strategize. Short-term, mid-term, long-term strategies. So that the 2063 agenda for Africa, which is the agenda for the Black race, will truly take place. That's one. Then the second prong is the external affiliation and association. What does that mean? Just like you said that other world powers are forming alliances and whatever they're doing, Africans need to be able to do that as well.
yeah,
Right? So we say, you know what? Okay. Look, China, we form associations and which is the external association or affiliation and association. Now, but that affiliation means what? For instance, the affiliation of me with the Ghanaian is important. You know why? Because if the Ghanaian fails, it therefore me as a Nigerian have failed.
obviously.
And if Nigeria fails, Ghana has failed, Ivory Coast has failed, Senegal has failed, right? Kenya has failed. Because our intra-continental trade that has exceeded 30-40% has bound us together. That's the external affiliation that we have. That those of us who know that if you fail, I have failed. So guess what? Whatever would cause the problem for you to fail, I'll deter it. And that's what Europe has done.
Yeah.
That's why NATO was formed, right? Because they know if one fails, the other fails. So Africa needs to come up with an agenda like that, an affiliating agenda, right? Now, the association is with external within outside of Africa. What does that mean? Hey, look, I need my cobalt to be mine. I don't have the resources. You want to give me the machine? I talked to Britain. Britain say, no, I don't want to give you a machine. All right, fine. I'll go to France. France, do you want to give me the machine or not? So I can mine my cobalt, so I can sell it to you. And you say, no, you don't want to give me because your brother, who's in Europe, say no. Then you know what? To help with it, I'll go to India. You have the resources, give me the means to mine it. If you mine it I will give you to help you develop. But guess what? You think India gives a damn about me? No, they don't. They really don't. If I give it to China, you think China cares about me? No, they do not. But what they care about is the resources that they want to get so that they can go take it. But you can't come take it for free. If you want to come take it, you give me the technology and I'll give it to you. That's the kind of relationship of external association that we need to work, which is external what networking, external what do you call it? Strategy formation that we need to. And I'll say, you know what? I need to put satellites so that I can communicate with my brother in the village of Nakuru in Kenya. But I need satellites. But I don't have the means. All right, Starlink, the United States, I want it. But if you give me, I'll give you access and be able to use Starlink to help me communicate. But as I do that, I also know that data is the new currency. The data you're going to collect, I'll have access to it. Whatever money you get, I get a percentage. That's how you negotiate. And if you come to terms with some of these people, they know what's up. You understand? What's this guy's name? I've forgotten now. JK something. Who negotiated with the Arabs? I said, you have the oil. It's on the ground. We need to mine it. But they don't have the means. What did they do? They negotiated. He said, look, okay, fine. I will take the oil out. I'll pay the staff. I'll build new houses. I'll build new hospitals for the staff. I'll pay the children's fee who are working in those mines. And I'll give you maybe 200 barrels or 300,000 barrels a year for your ministry to work. And I'll give you 25% of the profit of the oil so I can mine it. So that's the deal. He knew that in spite of all that, he's going to make a whole lot of money. He did make money. He became one of the richest men. But guess what? Who benefited? Saudi Arabia benefited. So that's the kind of negotiation that we've been.
That I think basically minerals beneficiation is the way to go. Getting processing it before. Don't carry our raw materials out. Adding value to it. So ultimately, who will shape the future? Those extractive minerals or those mastering the technology and partnership to transform them?
You just said it. Those who have the capacity to master the ability to transform those minerals into good use. And that's a quote that I had. And those are the people who will shape the future. Because those are the people who go to the stars and bring down the stars to Earth.
Fantastic. Now, that's question we've been waiting for. That question I've been putting off till much later in the program. You've been talking about the 7 steps, or the 7, what do you call it now, that pulled
the 7 steps will fall of any empire, great empire.
Yeah, that bring down an empire. So I want them concisely, briefly, just list them, briefly explain them, and then let's.
Right. So for you to truly,
and then you can also, in doing that, see which empire is failing right now in that direction. Let's see if we can do it. Needs to down with your eyes.
Right. So to truly understand the narrative of what those 7 steps of a failing empire look like, you need to look at those empires that were superpower that failed, right? And I think in our first segment, I talked about some of those empires. The first truly global empire was Spain. Spain ran the world. They really did. They conquered the Americas. From I think the year 1470 something, when Columbus discovered Americans, right? That's when Spain began to truly become a global power, because they had expeditions and all the things that they had. So from 1492, when they did that, they expanded, right? And how could they expand? And how were they able to control the narratives and own everything? Again, it's control of money. And what did they do? The empire at that time that was big in the American region was the Aztecs and all that. What did they have? Gold. They had gold, right? So the Spanish consider, what did they do? They came to take those gold for free. Minerals, they took it. And Spain became rich. Super, super, what do you call it? Stupendously rich, right? But then as they grew, they became wealthy. And it gets to a point where over 400 tons of gold was put into Spain by 1600. It was that too much. They became so wealthy. But then with that comes anger, despair, envy. So that the point where other great nations or emerging nations, what did they do? They started envying Spain. And Spain had their military everywhere. So they needed to maintain those military. So that's one was Spain, right? The second one was Britain. Britain, like they say, was so powerful. They had the greatest ship because they emerged, right, as super did Spain. And you know those wars that they fought, right? And that broke down Spain eventually. But I would talk about those things that broke down Spain to the point where it decimated. Now, the rise of Britain. Britain became another great superpower. They had military bases all over. The currency, just like the previous Spanish dollar that was earned from the Americas, became the unit of trade around the world. Britain had the pound, and everything everybody did was traded on the pound, right? And it was so super powerful. But then again, they fell into the whole narratives of a failure, and they fell. The next one was Russia. Russia, at the emergence after 1945, became a superpower. Great, amazing. I mean, they were the first to put man in space, right? And they did that. They did all the other things, and then America started racing. Just like Britain raced after Spain. The Americans started racing, and they tried to surpass, USSR, which was USSR, not Russia, because they formed that. And they were global power. They had the greatest armies. They weaponized, they industrialized, all of those things took off. And then came America, as we see as the greatest power right now. And in our time, you and I are witnessing almost a dwindling, as we can say, of America to the rise of China. Now, the question is this: what are those entities, or what are the yardsticks, or what are the core units
Science, if you like.
that you can right that would determine if an economy or great power is deteriorating? One is the expansionist idea. And I said it, and I think I alluded to the other quarter where I say China was smart enough right now not to expand beyond its capacity. All great powers, from Spain to Britain, expanded so far beyond their borders. It was resource control, and they needed to force. But there's so much you can force the locals of anywhere, to the point where you continue to take those resources. Now, one of the first area, again, Spain took resources from where? From Americas, right? From the Aztec. Britain took resources initially first from India. Up to $20 trillion in today's currency was what was taken out of India. And remember, India was a superpower in its own right at that time. Great in civilization. Well, when I talk about India, I talk about India today, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and all the others, right? Right. So, and of course, then they came to Africa, right? So, when you expand beyond the resources that you have, you create military bases, you have to defend them. And then there'll be wars. And for you to be able to manage and maintain those wars, it costs money, right? And not just that, but as you become wealthy, guess what? The citizens of your country would also become lazy. And all of them will become intellectually lazy as well. One of the things that happens is they become lazy. They just feel, you know, there are certain things that are beneath them, right? So there's dwindling issues at home as you expand outside. So you now find out that, hey, we have so much money. Why should I go to war? Because you want to maintain those posts, those outposts. I don't want to fight a war. I want to enjoy money. So because of that, they expand themselves. Then they cannot maintain. Then they start what? Borrowing money. And as they borrow, remember there are other civilizations or nations who are rising who want to see you down. So that's one of the first one. Military expansion. Now the second one, as I alluded to earlier, as we begin to go on, where you expand so much, exceed your capacity or resources, you begin to borrow. As you borrow, your currency begins to dwindle. It's called the debasement of your currency. When Spain did theirs, what happened? It was first in gold. After a while, they couldn't afford the gold. They weren't getting the gold because there was so much fight and all that resistance. What did they do? They started adding copper to the gold. So by the end of 1600, guess what? The copper far exceeded the gold that they have in their currency. So merchants did refuse to take it in the currency anymore. You understand? Because it's not gold anymore, it was now copper. Right? So that was what happened to them. British, it happened to them as well. You understand? So that they begin to debase the currency to the point where by 1893 and 1800s, the currency of the pound fell. And the gold that they had and other resources they could carry, they couldn't. You understand? And we see what happens here in the United States now, where the American dollar was not as strong anymore like it used to. If you remember, before 1973, when President Nixon, the gold was attached to the dollar. So every other country in the world had their gold stored in the United States. But the United States was fighting so many wars. The Vietnam War, World War, this, that, to the point where they couldn't. Now they now start borrowing. So people looked and said, hey, dude, your currency, you're borrowing from me. And you're borrowing against the gold that I have in your house. Now I want my gold. Spans called of the gold. Everybody started taking their gold. So in order to maintain what they had, the gold was no longer attached to dollar.
Currency.
President Nixon now what? Debased it. So the currency value dropped. You understand? So these are the debasement that you see. And we see what's happening now, that the petrodollar, which they were smart enough to attach to the petrol for exchange in protection of Saudi Arabia, we know that's what happened. It's now falling to the point where all these other countries, what are they doing? They're trying to create a new form of currency to trade the petrol. So the petrodollar is now falling. So once they're able to do that, then the power that America has is no longer available. That is the current threat that began in 1973 that is now playing out. And if that happens, America is in trouble. You understand? So we begin to see some of all these things taking place. Now, the third one is constant debt spiraling. All of this country, because of the wars, because of the currency debasement, because of everything, what happens to them? They begin to borrow. How much does America owe now? America has $36 trillion in debt. So if you compare that to the amount of money that they have, the GDP is 30 something, 31, 32 trillion dollars, right? But they owe 36 trillion. You understand? So these are some of the indices that show that America is truly dwindling. You understand? Where eventually everybody begin to take their money out. You understand? I think recently somebody had said that those people who control currencies on the earth, they know how they do this. They took about $150 trillion out of the economy. And that is beginning to spell because they see what's going on, they're afraid. And they've been doing this for over 150 years. So we begin to see how this thing play out again.
Yes.
America is not, when they started industrialization, America produced everything they ate, they drank, everything they produced. Today, America is a consuming economy, not a productive economy. And that's why you hear Trump screaming and shouting everywhere, bring back the production to America. You understand? Everything America, even the tissue that they use, the face mask. I mean, it was embarrassing to see that America face mask came from China. The clothes, everything, the technology, everything is coming. So America is not producing anymore. These are some of the yardsticks that show that things are going really bad. And when you begin to lose your reserve, right? The money you have on your reserve, you're losing it. That's bad. Pretty totally bad. And then you have the internal social decay, right? Where in America, I'm sorry to say, as a child, you can no longer tell a child what to do. A child can go to say, you know what, I want sex change. I'm 13 years old. I can no longer be a boy. I want to be a girl. And you don't need the permission of your parents to be able to have surgery. And the system is allowing it. That is the moral decay. And that's where it's at. I mean, look at the drug addiction. 77,000 people die every year from drug overdose in this country. 70 to 77,000. America is screaming. I hear Trump screaming that they're importing drugs into the country, which is a fact. You understand? And all of this begins to weaken the moral integrity of a nation, the productivity of a nation, and the decadence that's taking place of a nation. And the last one, the total collapse, where everything comes together and there's a collapse. So these are some of the steps. And we see this step happening to America. It doesn't take 1 year. Spain took about 60 years to do that. Britain took about 40 years to do that. Russia, from the fall of the Berlin Wall, took about 9 years to school USSR, I mean, from 9 years from the fall of Berlin Wall to totally disintegrate to where it is now. Only Russia is standing, and everybody has shifted. We'll see what's happening in America, and that's why when Trump came, he understands the narrative. He smelled the flower, and he said, you know what, we're not going to do this. So if he's left for Africa, now the question is this: would China truly be the next power? Would they? Really, that's another question.
Do they have what it takes, do you think?
Probably not. And I'll tell you why. Because China is not an open economy. It's not an open society. The freedom that America has, where intellectuals can come in, learn the language, speak the language, do everything, like every other industrialized power has done, it's hard for them to do that. It's a closed economy. Even without that, guess what? It's about 16% of the Chinese 1.4 population that belong to the Chinese Communist Party. So it therefore means the rest are not part of the Communist Party, because the power that they have to transform these people into where they are was basically done by the Chinese Communist Party. So until they begin to open up and let intellectuals come in, because one of the hallmark of a failing superpower is when your intellectuals begin to run away. And that's why when people were angry when Trump was doing what he was doing to the Ivy League schools, because people will no longer come to the US and intellectuals could look for other ways. Like talents would always seek places where it's most appreciated and can be utilized.
True.
So that's why. So would China be able to open up? Do they have the flair of the black diasporas? And I said it before in our last chapter, unless you have black diasporas in your community, you truly not be a student. Because we come with the intellect, with the capacity and the strength, but also come with the cultural and ethnic flair, like me, power. So these are some of the things.
Amazing.
We truly critically look and say, hey, you may have military might, you may become the second or first number one economy in the world, but what are the other indices that truly make you a global power? Not to suppress or oppress other people with your military strength, because within you will also begin to decay. Like I said, by the year 2100, some experts are saying that the population of China would just be about 1 billion people. Some of them even said 900 million people will be in China by the end of the turn of the 21st century. 21st century. So they understand that. You understand? And that's why it's inevitable that the outlook, unless everybody leave Earth or something happens, the outlook is Africa. And Africa is here to stand and be truly relevant and we dominate. But the beauty is this: as Black people, we're not vindictive. We don't go around usurping power and killing people and subjugating other people. It's not in our nature. We don't do that. Hopefully, when the Black race truly begins to dominate, that's when God will truly be happy with the earth, because these are people who are the original set of people, original creation on earth, will truly go back. Everything is coming back. It's a 360. Quantum physics, quantum mechanics will begin to tell you that.
I like that. I like that. I like that. On that note, I cannot thank you enough. It's always a delight to talk to you in person, on screen. And, I think that, the audience has been blessed for this. I want to thank you very much. There's quite a lot we're going to be talking about. There's so many topics we're going to be bringing to our viewers here on the Diaspora Television Network. And I can't thank you enough. I mean, you're just a walking encyclopedia on world affairs. That's the only way to describe you. Thank you so much, Dr. Aluya. You like that. So, and to the viewers, I would say thank you very much. And just stay tuned to this channel. Keep subscribing, and we'll be bringing you more and more of this. I'll see you on the next one.